When you don't have to worry about paying bills, you have time to think. That makes you extremely dangerous. This is why it is designed for us to never reach that level. If you're always in survival mode, you will never have time or energy to maximize your potential. Tweeted by Earn Your Leisure. It's the Toya Talks podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to Tuesday's episode of the Toya Talks podcast. At the time of recording this, I'm calling it inverted commas. Whether that ends up being the actual title of the podcast is actually up to the ancestors to determine. If it sounds a little bit different, it's because I'm in a different part of the house. And I just wanted to kind of be in a different part of the house, a different part of a view, you know. And we need to talk about environment and things like that. That's an episode actually all on its own, especially since moving and being in a very black, affluent environment has really kind of fed into my soul. It's so nice to watch, see, witness, be a part of black affluence in a way that I feel that London doesn't always provide that. I think we see pockets of black affluence, but we never see it in like a concentrated area where black people are more dominant. Haven't seen that in a really, really long time. So where I've moved, to be able to witness it and see it on a daily basis, it literally feeds my soul, especially when we understand the dynamics of how society is constructed and how society operates. Now, you know how we start the podcast, like we always talk about like certain things that happen in society, and then we get into the meat of the episode. Also as well, we do have a dilemma, and it's actually quite an interesting one. I deliberately saved it till today because I think it leads into a future episode that I have prepped, but one that I think is quite important that we talk about as well. So let me start by saying, ended my contract, and to be quite honest with you, I think there were so many learning lessons from myself, and obviously dealing with Florence and things like that. I mean, I don't know, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's like I always say to you, like when you experience trauma in the workplace, you may not label it as trauma, but it is trauma. It's when you are forced or feel backed into a corner, when you feel attacked, and when you know within yourself it's because you're a black woman that your white counterparts will never experience the working world or your working life in quite the way you do. And I think for me, you know, I come on here and I talk about my experiences. I come on here, advise on dilemmas and things like that. But equally, I'm very consciously aware that I too don't have the opportunity to kind of work through the trauma until I'm in another role. And even then, I definitely feel as though it kind of sits with you, isn't it? It's like you have PTSD from all your work experiences, and every workplace potentially triggers something that you have experienced in a previous role, and therefore there lies the test in how you deal with that situation. Because I always say to people, the true test of whether you've learned or grown from a situation is when you're confronted with that situation again and you make a different choice. You kind of regress to your learning lessons of the initial situation that has now triggered you to think about what happened in the past so that you're able to make better decisions moving forward. I think a couple of things that I learned from my last role is, again, it was about kind of me knowing when to leave and leaving at the right time. I definitely feel as though I left at the right time, and it really gave me perspective, because something that I've always thrived and loved is being a consultant. I love going into an organisation, pushing the boundaries of what I'm comfortable with, starting again, kind of winning people over with some quick wins, being the subject matter expert, delivering and moving on. And I think this is the one role where, like my previous, I had started 3 or 4 months after I started my previous role, and I had 2 contracts running at the same time. And as a consultant, you do that. Like, that is just normal. That, you know, I think society tells us you only allowed to have one job as a consultant, one job as a perm anyway, and then you take that into the consultancy realm and you think, actually, yeah, I'm only allowed to have one job. And I've had this discussion with you guys before where I've said, as a consultant, you utilize the ability to be non-exclusive to a lot of these organizations. You don't go around telling them, oh, I've got a list of clients and I work for this. You just go ahead and do it. And much to the opening quote of this episode is the way that society is built is to keep you on the same level where you're always on survival mode, and society is built in such a way that for black women they never actually want us to reach our full potential because it's not in society's interest for that to happen. And what we see is, as we are in the workplace, it manifests in our interactions with the Karens, the Sues, the Sallys and the Claires, or the Kevins, the Tims, the Scotts of this world. And I'm really clear about on the podcast and certain episodes that a lot of my experiences in the world of work is, number one, in white dominated industries. And obviously when we talk about BAME, people tend to put Asian people within the same bracket as black people, when I have continuously said the black experience is uniquely different from the Asian experience, which is uniquely different from the white experience. White people tap into a privilege that gives them an experience that as a black person we will never have. And I feel as though the contract that I just came off was a classic example of a white woman, Italian woman, who saw me, a black woman, in a senior position as a consultant, and she wanted me to know that she is the boss, even though she's not my boss. It's the idea that there are some white people that are so scared of black people's success because they automatically think that we're coming to get some type of vengeance for colonialism or the slave trade. Now, what we are all really looking for is that reparations and an admission, but ain't nobody trying to kind of seek vengeance. I haven't got time for that. And I say all of this to say that I also recognise that I have a lot of non-black women, non-black men that listen to this podcast. I'm very aware of you. And I have no issue with any race wanting to come onto the podcast, listen and learn. I have no issue with that. What I do have an issue with is when you try to tell me what my black experience is, when you have never been a black person in a day in your life. You don't understand how, as black women, a lot of us have to work twice, 10 times as hard, and then even when we get there, we're still working on that 10 times as hard mentality, because we understand that we're a moving target. We understand that it's not liked that we're there, but as black women, we're best in class because we have to work 10 times harder. And I think this is what I was saying about the environment, and kind of not just your work environment, your living environment, people you keep around you. They feed into who you are as a person. They feed into your soul. For a lot of people, I know and recognise a lot of people are in organisations and roles where they're completely miserable and they're not happy. And I've always said mental health comes first, but so does an objective and a plan when you're going into these organisations. A lot of you are miserable in your workplaces because you approach that workplace without a plan. And what's happening now is you're looking at it holistically and you're regretting even joining an organisation. You're hoodwinked into these companies and then you find yourself stuck. And the worst thing in a career is to feel stuck, because to be unstuck takes a lot of work, and there's a lot of trauma you're enduring as you feel stuck. And part of feeling stuck is the way that society is built to always be in the system. You know, the cost of living crisis, for example, people are not really looking to move jobs. They're like holding on to these jobs and holding on to these roles. You're made to feel like you can't negotiate because, oh my God, you should be so grateful to be in a role. And I always say that being so grateful comes from a subservient mentality whereby a lot of us are still mentally enslaved and we are still in the chapter of subservience. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm past that stage in my life of subservience, especially when I've had to make sacrifices to get where I am and continuously making those sacrifices. When your lived experience of the world of work is trauma, that becomes part of your lived experience. So I can't then go into an organisation and feel subservient to somebody who treats me different solely because of the colour of my skin, and let it not go above anyone's head. A lot of my negative experiences have been with white people, and it is because a lot of there's certain industries that I work in, it's mainly white dominated, male dominated first, and then white women second. And I definitely have experience where Asian people are. I find that whenever I've worked in organisations with Asian people, they see black people as beneath them. So they are always looking for acceptance from white people. And I've always had the experience of Asian people being the preferred choice of the white person. And I know, I understand the fabric of how society works. I get the history of it. But this is why I have always said that for me, the podcast has always been a safe space for us to be honest and to share. And as soon as I felt as though there was a value to be added to a podcast, that's when I developed a podcast. It wasn't something that happened overnight. I didn't jump onto the hype of a podcast. Like, I already had one. I was, I think, a year and a half deep when podcasts blew up. So for me, the podcast was always supposed to be an outlet, but also I recognise that with Snapchat, it only lasts for 24 hours. Snapchat is the birthplace of Toya Talks, and people kept saying, oh my God, I missed this, and I wish, can you repost this, and da-da-da. And I thought, okay, you know what, I'm going to do a podcast. And it took a lot for me to mentally get to that space where I was even ready to put myself out there like that, because I've told everybody, I'm not here for fame and money, because I make my own money through my career, and I'm really, really happy with my career. I make my money. So if I was doing the podcast for money, I would have quit by now. Do you know what I mean? I think what's happened is I've managed to create a business out of Toya Talks, but ultimately for me, it has always been about educating and teaching black women how to navigate the world of work, because I feel like success and navigating the world of work have been quite separated, but I think they are unified in, number one, being able to define what success means to you. And I keep saying this all the time because everybody has a different definition of what success is. For some people, it's earning over 100k a year. For some people, it's just finding a career path that actually suits them, that they're happy with. I'm going to close this window because I can hear these kids screaming, and I'm very hot in this house, but you know what? Short of telling these kids to shut up. Oh, that's better. Double glazing, we love it. I think for me, it's always been really important that the podcast adds value, and it adds value to your careers, it adds value to your life, and it's an opportunity to have real conversation and give people the practical skills to be able to navigate work and life. Because I feel like the reason why a lot of people don't do well in the world of work is because they haven't been taught the practical skills to navigate. And this is even before we've looked at success. It's just being able to understand the office politics, being able to develop emotional intelligence, because I definitely feel a lot of you don't have a developed understanding of what emotional intelligence is. And I feel like when we start being very conscious about how we navigate work, we become accountable to how we navigate. I definitely feel as though there are certain social cues that a lot of us, we never had, like I never had. You know, the idea that awkward silence was because something was awkward. The awkward silence isn't an opportunity for me to fill the gap with just talking for talking's sake. And I was very much that person, definitely in my early 20s, because I just wanted to impress. I wanted to hold on to my job, and I licked a lot of ass because I thought, right, if I kiss this ass, this person's going to recognize that I'm loyal. And as soon as you look to kind of tap into that quote unquote bank of loyalty, you soon realize that these people don't give a shit about us. They don't give a shit about us. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say every organization is doom and gloom, but it's probably a very slim percentage of organizations understand the nuances of for black women to navigate the world of work. We're not just navigating as women, we're navigating as black women. That's an added nuance that unless a black person sits down and has that conversation with non-black people are unaware of the nuance. They are aware of the differences, 100%. White people gatekeep whiteness, 100%. And this is why, even in life, you watch white people defend each other in a way that is almost quite aggressive. And it's because they're gatekeeping whiteness. And what is that layered whiteness? It's white supremacy that they're gatekeeping. So you as a black person could be arguing with a white woman, and a white man will always tell you, the black woman, to calm down. Because that white man is gatekeeping white supremacy. He's also gatekeeping whiteness. And that gatekeeping is the protection of white people. And these are the micro, macro behaviors that happened in the world of work. Now, if you were to say that to a white person, they would swear blind that you're making it all up, they'll gaslight you, it's all in your head. But there are so many examples of this. I'll give you an example. Whenever I am coming into London, central London, wherever I am, okay, where there's crowds of people, I'm just walking, minding my business. A white person will see you walking and will try to walk through you. And if you bump into them because you are also on your destination, and say you're like, excuse me, i.e. the person's bumped you, they're looking at you like you have the problem, because they're expecting you to move out of the way. See, white people, a lot of white people have been raised to believe that they are superior. So when you are walking down the road and they see you, they expect you to give them space to walk past. And for a long time, I used to do that. Because I used to be like, you know. And then I had to then have a conversation with myself and say, Toya, is this the subservient ideologies that have been planted into your head from young and still by society that's causing you to feel like you need to get out of the way? And it's so prevalent in the world of work, the idea that a black person is occupying space. So a white person feels the need to dominate so that they can tell us who's in charge, because any type of power that a black person has by knowledge or role, oh no, we need to make sure that person knows their place. That person needs to get out of the way so that they know that a white person actually is in charge. It's very toxic, very toxic. So it's integrated in the fabric of society, even in our day-to-day lives. So now the way I operate is, listen, if you see me out, you see I mind my own business. Like, I really just about my business. If I'm walking on the road and a white person is walking towards me, or a non-black person for that matter is walking towards me, I'm not gonna just get out of the way because they exist. They're gonna make space for me because I'm also on my destination going to somewhere pretty important like them as well. And I feel like when I got to that stage, when I had that mind shift, I'm very clear about kind of the dynamics of the way society operates. Like Boris Johnson and all the antics that he has done, a black man could never ever get away with it. It wouldn't happen. By the time they've told you what happened when this black man finished sucking the milk out of his mum's breast, you will know everything. They will discredit him. In fact, they will find his uncle or auntie or relative that was cautioned for petty theft. But when it comes to Boris Johnson, I literally feel like this man could get away with murder, and all they would say is he was forced, in my opinion. I just don't understand where the accountability comes in with Boris, because it could never be a black man. And now I understand where there was a black man in the Labour Party, Chalker. I can't remember his last name, but Chalker, he's an Igbo guy. And for all intents and purposes, he was earmarked to be the leader of the Labour Party. Like, he was a natural successor. And he made an announcement. He's married to a white woman, and he's actually mixed race. And he made an announcement. He was like, so he's mixed race, but he is kind of like black passing. Like, I didn't realise he was mixed race until obviously the press started going into every aspect of his life. But in any case, he basically came out and said, you know what, I'm not going to actually run for Labour leader because I'm not ready for, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not ready for the press and society as a whole to start dissecting my whole life. I'm not going to do that to my family. And I never really understood it. I was like, this is your opportunity. But this is when I used to have this view that if you're mixed race, you're black, when in fact you're not, you're mixed race. And then now I'm older, and now I've had experiences, now I've witnessed a lot of things, and I've seen a lot. I realised that one of the reasons he didn't want to run is because, number one, he's black passing, and he sees himself as black, and the media sees him as black, and he knows that the measure in which he will be treated by the press will be very different to, say, his white counterparts. And he didn't want the ag. He didn't want it. So he's like, you know what? I'm happy being a member of parliament. I don't need to be the leader of the Labour Party. I'm not trying to run for Prime Minister. I just want to make my money, make changes, and move on with my life. And I completely understood it. I got it. That is how society at a government level operates. Then what more about us civilians living in society, just trying to mind our own business, make money, and live life, and just trying to be happy? I am so annoyed. I've just listened back to the episode, to the beginning of this episode, and I can hear this noise. And I'm just going to say a disclaimer. First of all, I need to apologise, because if there is anything about me, I take pride in this podcast, and I take pride in the fact that I am the one that mixes and masters it, does all the production, everything you to be able to edit and put it out. But something that's really annoying me is Apple, and I need to say my little rant before we go into the podcast episode. It's really starting to piss me off how Apple it's the way their products work, right? It's to get you to buy the next generation of products, and to get you to further invest in the Apple brand. Now, I've invested in it. I can't run away from it. I've got a desktop, I've got an iPad, I've got a phone that's Apple, I've got my MacBook Air. And what I've realised is, as time goes on, I get that even the value depreciates. But the way I look at it is, I shouldn't be forced to buy a new product because Apple's released a new product. Do you understand? And I know there's something happening in America with a court case regarding iPhones, but I've just noticed, even with my Apple MacBook, it's been great, right? It's what I use to first record the podcast and everything. And I'm all for investing in your craft and developing your craft. You guys will testify to the fact that when we started the podcast, my mic was very different to what it is now. I've invested in the mic, I've invested in software, I've invested in training myself. And what's pissing me off is, I've now been forced to get a new MacBook. Okay, fine. I go to try and get a new MacBook and they've all run out. And I'm hearing this, if it's not the fan, it's this noise, and it's driving me absolutely insane. So I was literally about to say, you know what, guys, I'll be back next week and I'll finish off this episode. But I'm trying not to let the devil win here. But I'm really irritated because it's just driving me absolutely insane. And I know it's the devil. I get it. I am going to buy a new MacBook. It won't be delivered until the 15th of July because now everybody's obsessed with getting a new MacBook. Like, it's probably because their old one's not working properly or whatever. It's just driving me nuts. I could use my desktop, but the sound sounds awful. And yeah, it's just driving me insane. And as purely in consumerism here, I get it. But I now need to buy a new MacBook, and I have to wait until the demand flattens out so I can get the one that I actually want, and one that I know that will serve the podcast really well. It's just driving me mad. So I apologise for the sound. I'm trying my best here, but I'm really damn irritated. Now, so you record all this content only to hear this buzzing sound. I think to myself, if I didn't restart this laptop, it would be all the way through. So I sincerely apologise. And I'm hoping by the next episode, it'll be a new, MacBook, and it'll be working really well. No massive fan noises as the fan tries to cool itself on the MacBook. No really weird sounds like all the way through. Sorry. Anyway, moving on. So I want to talk about. So I've called this episode of entitled inverted commas. Hopefully the title sticks. But I put up a post about 2 weeks ago now, and I said, How do you all feel about emails received from your colleagues and it doesn't even say hi, it just says your name? Now, for me personally, I gotta be honest, even without asking the consensus, right, I find it really disrespectful that people can't even be polite and have simple manners and just, hi, good afternoon, it's just Toya, comma, sometimes not even a comma, Toya, I've sent you an email, Toya, please find attached. It's like, why don't people have the basic manners to understand how to communicate? But then I feel like some of it is hierarchical, because I don't see certain members of staff doing that to senior managers. So it tells me that it's deliberate and people know what they're doing. I find it very aggressive when people send read receipts. So you want a receipt to say I've read your email. So then you will have a receipt at how long it's taken me to reply to you. And I'm just here to let my sisters know, don't fall for the trap. When there is a read receipt, it says send read receipt, I always say no. Because since you're giving me a choice, that means you're giving me an option. If you're giving me an option, I'll choose the option that best serves me. Me accepting that you get a read receipt is setting myself up, because the clock starts ticking at how long it takes me to respond. Because you've already got a receipt to prove that I've received it, I've opened it, I've read it. You know that information now. And when we talk about how to navigate the world of work, these are the things I feel that we need to understand and know. When I came into the working world, no one told me about read receipts. I didn't even know how to send a proper email. But I know that now we're in the social media age, so it's a little bit different. But even certain social cues like read receipts, they are aggressive in nature. I personally believe they are microaggressions. It's tantamount to putting a camera in my home as a remote worker and checking the emails that I'm reading. That's kind of how I personally look at it. Now, I fully understand there are some people that use read receipts and it's not intended to be that way. But I just want you all to understand that when people are not having certain basic social cues of hello, hi, it's 2 letters. When people are putting read receipts, it is aggressive. It's basically saying, I've got a stop clock now, from the point in which I've sent this email to the point of you reading it, to the point where you give me a resolution, to the point where you acknowledge that you have now read this email and there is now an action that needs to follow. And I feel like as Black women, this is how we are policed, and I do not like it. I'm tired of the way in which we are policed, but I'm also tired of us as Black women not realising we are being policed in that way. Now, I'm here to say to you, read receipts are aggressive. You go to the shop, you buy something, you get a receipt. What is it? A proof of purchase. You send an email and you get not a bounce back, but you get an acknowledgement email. We have received your email, we'll respond to you within 48 hours. That is an acknowledgement that they've received your email. So what is a read receipt? A read receipt is an opportunity for somebody to keep tabs on you having received their email, and the stop clock starts on when you respond, or the stop clock starts on when you go back to them having acknowledged their email, i.e. having read it. The aggression that comes from the lack of addressing somebody and it's not about being professional, because I feel even the word professional is used as a weapon these days. It's just about basic manners. It's like, please, thank you. Basic manners when you email someone and you say their name, not even a hello, hi. I have a way of which I email someone. I'll say, hi Tim, I hope you're well. For example, I just sent you XYZ. Would you mind letting me know by close of play today? I don't care if they're well or not. I don't actually give a shit, okay? But to me, it's like simple social cues when you are communicating with people. And I learned that from a white person, you know. Hi Toya, how are you? I sent you an email yesterday. Could you just let me know as soon as possible the answer to da-da-da. And it's the way in which, and I say white people because, again, I work in a white-dominated industry. It's the way white people will try and get something out of you without saying, I need it right now. Hi, how are you? It's very non-confrontational. It's very soft in its approach. It's very personable, while still having the objective of getting something from me. But when somebody emails me and just says, Toya, and launches into what they say, I feel myself, like my shoulders start to tense, because I'm now feeling defensive because it feels aggressive. And Even like where I'm consulting at the moment, there's a particular woman, she does it all the time. Now, when I was younger, the 20-year-old me, I used to respond in the same way, so I used to mirror that behaviour. And then I realised what emails were, and emails effectively are an audit trail of communication about whatever topic it is that you're communicating about. I understood the power of emails, and this is the reason why I took a step back and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to mirror the way somebody, like someone's opening and addressing an email. I'm not going to mirror that. What I am going to do is kill people with professional kindness. And when I say professional kindness, is I'm not stooping to your level of microaggression, because you know what, if you're going to act bad and stupid, you're going to fall on your face. And when you do, I will use these emails as evidence to evidence your behaviour and show a pattern of aggressive and unprofessional behaviour in the way in which you interact with me. That is how I operate now. This woman continuously, even when I respond to her and I'm like, hi, Sandra, it's always Toya. Come on. And it always comes. And the crazy thing is, I feel like people that write to people like that in an email, when you have meetings with them, they're not much different to their email tone. And we have a podcast episode called Tone Lexia, and I talk about tone, and I talk about how you communicate via email. And I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to give you another school of thought and another way of thinking when you're communicating with people, because in my 20s, I've had emails used against me simply because I felt like I needed to mirror behaviour to prove a point. But I realised actually, if my normal tone isn't to be that way, I'm only adopting that manner because somebody else is showing me that. And whilst two wrongs don't make a right, I get why people behave like that, and I understand in my 20s why I was doing that. But I wasn't really being strategic long term, because number one, I feel like people know who they're doing that to. They're never going to email the CEO or the director and just say the person's name. They're not going to do that. It's like a battle of the wills. They're trying to exert some type of dominance or trying to assert their authority. And what I won't do is give them what they want. And a lot of these people that email in that way, address people that way, are cruising for some type of a problem. They're cruising for some type of an argument or some type of friction. And what happens is, if they sow the seed of friction, you automatically become set up in that your immediate reaction is to be defensive. And as soon as you become defensive, you become aggressive. And that word in itself is layered in racism and toxicity. But what we're talking about is the strategy of navigating the world of work. If I know that this is a strategy that, say, a non-black person adopts in their email communication, why would I meet them where they are? Why don't I just allow them to create a pattern of behaviour that I could then put in my burn folder and use at a later date? And that needs to be the strategy that we need to now start adopting. And when we're talking about emotional intelligence, it's understanding that the person you're communicating with clearly doesn't have enough emotional intelligence to understand that their continued microaggression will set them up for an issue in the future. And I feel like a lot of us as black women, some of us become quite short-sighted because we're in the depths of our emotions. And what we cannot do is allow our emotions to rule us in the world of work, or at least allow it to rule us in the white gaze, because we're not afforded the empathy that white people are. We're not afforded the empathy that non-black people are afforded. So therefore, bringing emotions to the table of white people or non-black people will only be met with disregard. And as soon as you understand that, how you move and how you respond in the world of work will automatically be different. There is also another topic that I would like to touch on this episode. And I knew at some point I would have to address it, but I just didn't know how it would come about. But as the ancestors so have it, whenever I'm speaking to them, whenever I'm doing a treatment for an episode, whenever I'm in conversation with my ancestors, I always feel as though certain things will give rise to a certain conversations. And then I bring it to the podcast, and we commune in that topic, in that conversation. So about two weeks ago, I posted on my Instagram. So my personal Instagram handle is Toya_Washington. I'm really active on there. Instagram stories. Sometimes I do some Instagram lives that are just nuts. But yeah, I'm very much that type of person that if you DM me and I'm available, I'll respond. If I don't respond, I might just like the DM. But this particular woman, and it was a black woman. She responded to a post that I posted. So I don't recall what topic I was actually talking about, but I opened it up by saying, and those people who don't season their food. And then I continued saying what I was saying. So this person then come into my DMs and said, Toya, I think you need to be a bit careful when you say things like season your food, because white people may be offended, and you have a white best friend and she may be offended by you making reference to non-seasoning and white people, and it could be taken as you being racist. I ripped this black woman, I ripped her a new one. I ripped her arsehole out. I ripped it out, and I'll tell you the reason why. First of all, you're not going to come in my DMs. So we leave work after being policed and having to navigate strategically. Then in my Instagram, and then she made reference to people who may know me or work with me may see my Instagram. So firstly, you don't follow my platform at all, yeah? You've maybe seen one episode or maybe seen a post and decided to follow me, because what you will know about me is I'm not the type of person who, my personal life and my work life are completely different, yeah? I'm not the type of person that goes to work and give everybody my Instagram page. I'm not the type of person that goes to work and blurs the line between work and what I do in my personal life. I owe nobody in my workplace an explanation for my personal life, what I do with my personal life, my businesses, my work, my activism. I don't need the permission of white people to exist in society and live my life. That's the first thing. The second thing is, how dare you come into my DMs to try and police me and what I say? Now, when I mentioned non-seasoning, I'm not going to be intellectually dishonest. Yeah, I was talking about white people. But when I was talking about seasoning, I did not mention white people. I did not... Listen, typically, white people don't season their food. Yeah? That's not rude. That is a fact. If you were the average white person, you're having to argue with them about whether to use something to wash their body, whether they use soap. Some of them, they'll tell you they wash their bodies once a week. Don't come to me and talk shit, okay? Because there are certain demographic of people that live and exist in a certain way, and we're allowed to talk about it. As far as I'm concerned, sorry, my throat is killing me, hay fever. As far as I'm concerned, if I have a view about people that don't season their food, now, if somebody thinks I'm talking about them, it's because they don't season their food. Do you understand? I'm not here to pander to the emotions of non-black people. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to be a white person sympathizer. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not going to change the way I talk to satisfy a certain demographic so they can feel comfortable. Yeah, them white tears can cry me a river, because I'm not here for it. Don't do it with me. I'm really, and I even said to her, I said, you're going to get dragged. She goes, please don't drag me. I said, I'm fucking dragging you. Because when you decided to slither into my DMs and chat shit, you opened the floodgates for me to drag you and rip you out a new one. Now, I've got a white woman as my best friend. She is my best friend. She's somebody I trust implicitly. But let me be clear to you. I have a lot of friends from different cultures, different races, and I'm very clear with every one of them. I'm a black woman first, yeah? And if you have an issue with anything I do as part of Toya Talks, as part of my activism as a black woman, as part of spreading awareness about black women and our experiences, if you have an issue, you can't even be in my circle. You can't even be in my circle, because this is what happens with some black women. Some black women are so terrified to exist independently of stereotypes that they're willing to police other black women who stand independent of any type of stereotype and is very self-assured of who they are. What you are not going to do is have me second guess who I am and what I do to appease white people. I am not a white appeaser. I am not here to wipe away white tears. I'm not doing that, because in society, when we look at entitlement, when we look at the way society is constructed, it's constructed in such a way to oppress us as black women. And I'm talking specifically about black women here. That is how society is constructed. So what has now happened is white people have now recruited our good sis to be evangelizing for them. What no one is going to do is come to me and police me about what I talk about, how I talk about it, and how I deliver it. As far as I am concerned, my objective has always been for the advancement of black women, and that's not going to change. If you have a problem with that, this is not the podcast for you, this is not the platform for you, and I am not for you. And you need to understand how I run and how I operate. Some people refer to me as an influencer. What I am is a black activist. I am not that person that's going to be like, oh, if I say this, the brands aren't going to work with me. I don't give a flying shit about what the brand's like. I don't give a fuck. And maybe that's the reason why some brands don't want to work with me or won't approach me. I don't really give a shit, because the success of this podcast is not dependent on a brand. It's dependent on the black women receiving the message that I provide every Tuesday. It's the black women who share my podcast. It's the black women who talk about the topics on this podcast in their WhatsApp chat. What I am never going to do is allow anyone to come into my messages or to stand in my front and come to tell me how I should communicate. Now, this black woman that decided to DM me is very stupid, and I'll tell you the reason why. Black people cannot be racist. If you understand how racism works and the power dynamic required it for racism to be able to operate, then you know that as black people, that dynamic does not sit with us. The power for racism to operate does not sit with black people. So me talking about seasoning, if that makes me a racist, then that's what you want to think. That's up to you. But I'm not here to come and tell you what I am and what I am not. What I am not going to do is sit here and start pandering to white people. I'm not going to do it. I refuse. I won't talk to white people about race and racism. Why? Because there's a lot of educational tools and there's a lot of access to that education. I'm not going to sit here and talk to white people about allyship, because you know what? I didn't appoint you an ally, and it is your job to police how you are operating in that your allyship. What I am not going to do is justify to any person as to the reason why I navigate the way I do. I navigate the way I do because I'm a black woman living in a society that is white dominated. Sorry, living and breathing in an organization that is white dominated. So it means that the way I navigate has to be different. I've advanced in my career and I've been very successful in my career because I've understood how to operate and navigate in and amongst white people, in and amongst white spaces. But never, ever, ever get it twisted. I am a black woman first. I am a black woman first. And I feel as though, listen, for me personally, having a white woman as my best friend, I find my relationship with my best friend not only amazing, but we have the type of conversations that if white people on average were having those type of conversations, I feel as though white people will be less offended when black people are talking the things. My best friend gets more offended when we are on holiday and somebody is being racist towards me. Before I've even had a chance to deal with the situation, she steps in. Now, having a white best friend doesn't make me less black. Having a white best friend doesn't make me less active in my activism in doing what I do for the Toy Talks podcast and platform. If my white best friend is uncomfortable about anything she sees, she doesn't need to follow me on Instagram. She doesn't need to like my pictures. So I have to do none of those things. We're not friends because of the colour of our skin. We're friends because of the quality and the substance of our souls. That's why we're really good friends. Now, to come on someone's DM and say, oh, this person may feel this way, I actually think that's a reflection of you. And and what it tells me about you, that you're still mentally enslaved. You know, a lot of people in society as black people are still mentally enslaved. You're still in that mindset of thinking that white people are your oppressors and you have to kiss ass to be able to be accepted. That's what it tells me. And somebody gave me an example of something and it's so true. You listen, I know you're listening to this episode. I'm going to tell you something. You are the example of what it was like back in the day during slave trade, when they let that one black person into the house, and us lot, the rest of us, are outside in a cotton farm picking cotton, being slaves. And what's happened is we've been set free, but you're still enslaved. You're still enslaved, and you're still advocating for your slave master. And then when you go outside to the cotton farm, there's no one there no more, because we're all free, darling. We are free indeed. Harriet Tubman set us free, darling. But you're still there in the house, and you think you're better than, because maybe you have access to, whatever the case is. But we are free. You aren't free. Because if you're free, you would never in a million years seek to police the voice of a black woman. Because I mentioned the word seasoning, you got offended. Listen, it's not me you're going to ever do that with. And I ripped you a new one in that DMs. And I know for a fact that it took you a few days to recover. And I told you, screenshot this. So anytime you want to move mad, you have an example of your madness and an example of what will happen when you try it. And I'm quite happy for you to screenshot it. If you like, put it on Twitter. I have got no problem. Because what you're never ever going to do is police me. I have been oppressed for way too long. I've been silent for way too long. And I have too many experiences for you to sit here and tell me what I can and cannot say. And what I've found is a lot of people accuse black people of being racist to silence them. Oh, it's reverse racism. Racism cannot be reversed. White people created racism because the power structure and dynamic required as the necessary ingredients for racism to operate. Therefore, the only thing that's reversing is your car. There's no such thing as reverse racism. That's bullshit. And it's a way in which the Karras, the Peters, the Tims, the Scotts in this world make themselves into victims because they're doing struggle Olympics. They're doing oppression Olympics. We have that podcast episode. What is really sad is this same black woman that had energy for me on this podcast, on this DM. She can't even ask her boss to take annual leave. She's probably the same person that's been in the same role for 10 years and everybody around you have been promoted, and yet you're still in that same house, in the same kitchen, and you're being oppressed by the white person. You're still there, telling yourself that one day freedom is gonna come. These times your one day hasn't occurred and you've opened the door and you're doing your one day, all of us are free, honey. You're still in the house. Don't try it with me, because I'm always going to be the wrong person for that. And me and you are not friends. You don't know me from nowhere. And my white best friend doesn't need an advocate. She can advocate for herself. She has no issue. And if she had an issue, she would say it. But one thing about me, you have to understand, I am a black woman first. I'm an activist first. And if any of my non-black friends have a problem with that, we can't be friends, because it's intrinsic to who I am. Effectively, if they have a problem with it, they have a problem with me. They have a problem with me. And some black women, honestly, some of you need to wake up. Wake up, because some of you are asleep on yourselves. Some of you are asleep on yourselves while you're empathizing and sympathizing with the white man. While you're sympathizing and empathizing with the white woman. These people will crush you. These people will crush you for their own advancement. So let's call it what it is. Let's be clear. Don't come into my DMs to police me, because I don't come into your DMs to police you. And the time you're investing in policing me is the time that you could spend with yourself and invest in yourself for the success of your own life and your career. These times you're asking permission to take annual leave while I'm taking mine. I'm just taking it. I'm not asking permission for leave. I'm taking it, honey. We took our freedom where you took to the kitchen. Don't try me. You know, something that I do find aggressive is the inverted commas. Sorry, I know I kind of jumped, but I have to flip it back now. Is the inverted commas. So I'll give you an example. Somebody in the, they're not in my team, they're in a wider team. And basically my contract is a new contract and it's a new supplier. So this team had to set up do the financial stuff with this particular client, customer. So then they asked me a question, I answered the question. So they must have done whatever they did, and it came to light that the person put the wrong information into the system. So because they put the wrong information into the system, another team got in contact with me and says, Toya, can you confirm this, because the wrong information has been put into the system. Before I could respond, this lady in the setup department, for example, let's call it the setup department, then emails this woman with me on copy and says, I asked Toya to confirm, and then she put inverted commas, the information below in inverted commas. And Toya confirmed XYZ. Hello? Toya's on the email thread. So I reread this email now and I thought, why would you put that in inverted commas? Like, it's so like passive aggressive. Like, why would you do that? So you know what I did? I then found the email where I gave this woman the correct information that she didn't use. And I replied all, because you wanted to do your inverted commas and passive aggressive behavior in front of an audience. So when you do that, I have to take it back to the same audience, inverted commas. So I replied, please find attached email sent on whatever the date was, where I confirmed the following information. Then I love a bullet point, you know. Bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3, bullet 4, bullet 5. Do you know that this woman never responded? The other lady from the other department, she goes, Toya, thank you so much for confirming. You see that inverted commas bullshit? It's passive aggressive. Now, as a black woman, we know that if we are presenting some form of evidence or email trail to display or evidence a certain pattern of behavior, they will gaslight us and tell us that that's not being passive aggressive. They were just accentuating or what's the word they use? They were just bringing attention to. They were just highlighting. No, they were highlighting the fact that they are trying to make it seem as though I gave them some misinformation that led to a mistake. And this is what I said earlier about the microaggressions and understanding when they show themselves. So I'm not saying that this woman is bad, but what I'm saying is this woman is very willing to throw you under a bus if she feels like if she throws you, the bus will be able to hit you. She'll throw you under the bus. And I don't really work like that. When she put those inverted commas, she wanted to highlight to the audience what she thought I did wrong. And I find that behavior happens a lot with white women. I find it a lot with them. Like, they're very willing to throw stones. And when I send a rocket launcher, suddenly they behave themselves. Suddenly, it's like they just come back into reality because they've been in some type of different existential universe. I definitely feel as though a lot of us overlook the subtle microaggressions that we should be paying attention to. You see, when I talk about you doing your due diligence, it's not just the things that are just very poignant. It's not just the things that are glaring. It's those often subtle things, and that's what microaggression, it's the word micro. It's those subtle things that give rise to certain things. And a lot of us as black women are looking for the bigger things because we are off the back of a recent workplace trauma. So we are hypersensitive to certain things that are very obvious, but are we sensitive to the things, or are we paying attention to the things that are micro? Are we really doing that? Because in this situation now I don't even think it's an issue. It's a non-issue. But what it is it's an example of a window into the way this person communicates. So now I know that I have to be very aware of this lady. I have to be very aware that this lady will try to provoke a situation, because had I not been copied into that email, this would have been a back and forth. I wouldn't have seen it, and by the time it probably would have gotten to me, I would not have the backstory of how this come about. Do you understand? And this is why I always ask people that send me emails, and they reference something, I was like, can you send me the original email? I like doing that, because I feel like sometimes as well they send you that email and they're not realizing why you're asking. Number two, they're often forgetting, like, an email trail can be so long that they're forgetting that somebody already threw you under the bus or attempted to throw you under the bus or did all their inverted commas in the first couple of emails. So by the time it gets to you, you're email number 10. There is a level of emotional intelligence that we as Black women need to develop in the world of work. We have to develop it. And I always used to believe that you're born with emotional intelligence, but I also think that you're learning to develop your emotional intelligence as you grow older and as you find yourself in certain situations. But don't be expecting people to tell you, hi, my name is microaggression. That's not how it works. That is not how it works. You have to be able to understand how things are communicated without it being very obvious. It's a micro. And I'm not asking you to look at every little thing. But when somebody's sending you something in inverted commas, highlighted, underlined, bolded, at some point you're going to have to understand that in itself is not only a microaggression, but how are you going to respond to that? When someone sends you an email, it doesn't say hi, hello, afternoon, nothing. It just says your name. That person is wanting you to pay attention to them. That person has a chip on their shoulder. That person has hierarchical issues because I'm telling you, they're not responding to this. They're not emailing the CEO and just saying the person's name. They're not doing that. Good afternoon, hello, hi. That's how they are. So why are they responding to you in that way? Why are they emailing you in that way? Because they think that they can. This woman is in a power struggle with herself. She works in finance. I work in finance. So why are you coming at me like this? And then, because she writes, like this particular woman, she writes like how she writes, like Toya, She writes like that. So then I know that she not only hierarchical, but she wants me to take notice of her. She's threatened by me. I marked up a contract the other day, and I sent it to a wider audience because I wanted their responses to a couple of things. And this same woman decided to come and tell me how to do my job, because she said, commercially, I don't understand why this is duplicated XYZ. I says, it's good practice to duplicate this within the annex. Full stop. Then she responded, oh, it may be good practice, but I think it needs to be removed. Bitch, I'm ignoring you. I ignored her. I ignore her because it reminded me of what my mum used to say to me. She said, it's not every email that you receive that you respond to. And I didn't really get it when she used to say it, but I get it now. Not every email, not every provocation are you supposed to respond to. Sometimes the silence can be very loud and very deafening. And I think as Black women, we don't understand the power that we have as Black women. And I keep saying our greatest superpower is being underestimated. It will remain our greatest superpower because they underestimate us, you know, and part of it is laced in prejudice. It's laced in preconceived ideas, but it also comes from the fact that a lot of white people, a lot of non-Black people have been raised in homes to believe that they are superior, better than. So then when they come into the working world, you're often working with people who do not even live amongst Black people. If you ask them if they live in amongst Black people, they'll say they're one Black person on their village or their road, or they themselves didn't grow up around Black people. So if they didn't grow up around Black people, they don't interact with Black people very well. And number two, you have to ask yourself, where did you grow up where you didn't grow up around Black people? You grew up in a white dominated area where you were told that white was the best, where you were told that Black people are beneath you, where you were made to watch different programs on TV, and when you saw Black people, you equated it to less than. Then those are the same managers, CEOs, directors coming into organizations to manage a diverse multicultural workforce, and you're trying to sit there and tell me there's not going to be some type of mistreatment, there's not going to be some type of tone deaf behavior, there's not going to be some type of disrespect? No, you're lying. Of course there are going to be all those things. But some of you as Black women, I feel like some of you are not understanding that these people are not your friends. These people are not your friends. I don't know how else to say it that will make some of you to understand. Some of you are really thinking that your boss that told you that you're going to talk about your pay rise in your up and coming review, that is an open door to a pay rise. When some of the reasons why they're saying these things is to deflect from having the conversation. It's to avoid, it's called avoidance. Some of you are so loyal to these organizations. You're so loyal. And I think loyalty as a quality is fantastic, but it's misplaced in an organization. It's completely misplaced. Because your father doesn't own the company, honey. You are not a shareholder. There was one place that used to work and they used to say, we are all the shareholders of this organization. Honey, I have not got a share price certificate. And what they do is they use these manipulating words to make you feel like you need to give everything. And what happens when you give everything and then you don't get anything back? When you ask for the annual leave and it's declined. When you try and get that pay rise, when you think you're going to get that bonus and you don't get it, that's when you realize that something is amiss. Honey, something has been amiss for a very long time. Welcome to the party. I want to share something with you. And it happened in my contract that I've just left. And I said to myself, this is the episode where it needs to, because I keep saying to you, learning how to navigate the world of work, and often the white dominated spaces in which we work in, is to sit and watch how white people navigate themselves. It's to understand the dynamics and the social aspects of work from the white perspective. It's so interesting. So my ex-boss, so the lady that I was reporting into in my old contract, my contract that I've just finished now. So you all remember when I was telling her about Florence, I made a complaint, I was being ignored, all this. Now, I'm not here to say that the boss that I was reporting into is bad. I don't think she was bad. I think she was one of those people that she didn't know what to do. And this is what made her a weak manager. When there was an issue, she never knew how to deal with it. She's non-confrontational, but what she's not understanding is dealing with situation doesn't make you confrontational. It makes you proactive. So obviously, this is the same woman when I said, I don't want to extend my contract. She said there's no budget, and then she rang me back. Oh, sorry, there is budget to extend you. I'm sorry, all of this shit. So already I know that she's very emotive. She's very knee-jerk. I can also comfortably say that I think that she's the type of person that hires really good people to make her look good. But actually, whether she actually is good, I'm not really too sure. But she's genuinely quite liked. So during the pandemic, within the first 2 months of the pandemic, she was hired by this organization. And they didn't go through like a competitive recruitment process. I don't know how she got the role. I'm really not sure how she got it. But anyway, she got the role, and for all intents and purposes, this woman has been delivering in this role, okay? To the point where she was winning awards, she was getting like some people do like company stand-ups and stuff. She was doing really well. Then obviously she hired me to come and consult on this project. The project was delivered really well, okay? And even from a governance perspective, like internally, they spoke about her really highly because this project was like high visibility, high value for them. So she's been in this role now for coming up to 2 years. And basically, she had to reapply for the job. Yeah, so she had to reapply for the job because obviously, number one, I think it was an FTC that she was on, so a fixed term contract. But in any case, I think the fact that they didn't go through a proper competitive recruitment process meant that when that fixed term contract or when her tenure came to end, they would have to re-advertise the job, right? So remember, this woman has been doing this job for almost 2 years. So she applies for the job. And I get why she applied. She's been doing really well. She's delivered the contract. She's quite senior. I think she's one of the directors now. But she's one of those, directors in name. So she applied for her job. And a day before my last day, there was an email that came out from the CEO. And the email basically was like a company-wide announcement to say that, and it names my boss, it has her name in black and white. She came and joined almost 2 years ago, And when she was hired, it was a non-competitive recruitment process. And as a result of that, when her contract came to end, they decided to advertise the role, in which my boss at the time applied for. And however, now that she applied for the role, there was a lot of people that applied. It was very competitive, but unfortunately, she didn't get the job. And now what's happening is the new person that's got the job, my boss is now going to hand over to them. And this will start taking place July, and then my boss will kind of leave the organization in August. I read this thing, I was like, what? You say what now? And you know what is fascinating is when you see it with a white person, because I was reading this, I was like, why is this CEO writing this? This is way too much information. Like, she could have just, what she could have said is, Claire is leaving and being replaced by Bob. You understand? She didn't have to tell us this whole thing. But honey, do your violence. Like, it's okay. So then one of my colleagues messages me and says, Toya, did you know about this? I said, I don't know nothing. I'm leaving tomorrow. This is the first time I see this yet. Long story short, my boss was absolutely in tears and she was devastated because obviously she'd applied for her own job that she's been doing for 2 years, and they ended up giving it to somebody else. And I thought to myself, wow. This isn't, clearly it's not about race, right? Because they're white here. All of them are white. But even within them, there's a civil war. Because I was like, what is this? Somebody who has been doing the job diligently for 2 years, has been getting awards and recognition, still has to apply for your job. That is a madness. Because me, personally, I wouldn't even apply for the job. I will go and find another job and I'm out. If I'm having to apply for the job, girl, no. But then I see it as at the point in which you are recruited a non-competitive tender, non-competitive recruitment, fair enough in it because you knew what it was. But then you almost apply like it's inevitable. Like, you're gonna get this job, boo. This woman didn't get her job, honey. This woman didn't get her job. So basically, they're saying that going through a formal interview process, you didn't get the job. But when you didn't have to go through a formal interview process, you were good enough for us to give you the job. That is a big, huge, rotted, stinking disrespect. But what are the lessons as black women that we can learn from this? And let me tell you what it is. No condition is permanent, honey. No condition is permanent, honey. That's what that shows you. You could be delivering. You could never take a sick day in the whole 5 years you've worked in this place. You could be getting employee of the week, employee of the hour. And let me tell you, when they ready to manage you out, they're going to manage you out, boo. You know what is worse? You know what is worse for me? It's the humiliation that comes with it. So you've basically, as the CEO said, the person that's been doing the role for 2 years, this bitch ain't good enough. That's what you're saying. She ain't good enough. She sucks at interview. That's what you're basically saying. And in my head, I was like, even the Oyibos have a civil war. I said, what is all that? What's all that, man? But personally for me, my boss needs to have more self-respect. Have more self-respect. Clearly, they can bend the rules when it suits them. When they were recruiting, they knew how to bend the rules to get her in. But they didn't know how to bend the rules to keep her there. You need to go where you are celebrated. I'll be damned if I'm applying for my same job. You're actually very mad. Not me. Not me. Why would I be applying for my own role when I'm keeping abreast of what's happening in my market? I'm still speaking to those recruiters. I'm updating my CV periodically. I'm having conversations. I'm keeping my options open. So for me, you're never going to catch me slipping. You ain't catching me slipping. No, you're not. And she was slipping. So now she's having to lick her wounds in front of everybody, because that woman still gonna work her 3 months notice. Oh yeah, boo. She's expected to give a handover to because she's now the incumbent, innit? Ooh, come there with the procurement words. She's now the incumbent supplier, honey. Yes, honey. She gon' give a handover to the person who's replacing her, and she still needs to find a new job. She still has to find a new job. Some of you are so loyal that these jobs are not loyal to you. And that, to me, like, seeing that, understanding that, watching that happen reinforced to me how disloyal organizations are, and how much more loyal as employees, as consultants, as contractors, as whoever, that you need to be loyal to yourself. Because you see these organizations like that, your situation will change. They will make you redundant like that. Oh my God, I've never missed a day of work in my life. I've never been sick, honey. You've never been sick. You're going to feel how it feels to be redundant. You're going to go through that process. And I feel as though these are the situations that happen that are teachable moments. And this is why I've brought it to the podcast, because listen, when my line manager's sending emails and she's harassing me for a handover, and I'm telling her, girl, you want a handover? I'm gonna charge you. When she's sending her emails with inverted commas, when she's purporting and perpetuating this level of violence because I'm on wind down mode, when this shit happens, she ain't getting my empathy. What I'm getting is the learning lessons from it. When you were doing the violence, you were doing hierarchy. Your hierarchy done smash you at your post now. Your hierarchy gave you a blood clot whack. What's all that? Because even in peace, some of these white people will still find violence. They will still have a civil war in and amongst themselves. And I'm out. Do you know, even on my last day, my boss, I never had a conversation with her. She sent me an email. She said she's off sick. Honey, you are sick to death of the place. You ain't sick, baby. The traditional sick. You're sick to death of this place and the way they've treated you. What? Look at the karma. When Florence was moving mad, my boss kept silent. The woman wasn't even trying to do shit. She wasn't even trying to do shit. Now look at it. Now look at it like Lego. All fall down. Bullshit. She sent me an email effectively saying, oh, I've delivered so much there, and I should be really proud of myself as a consultant of like seeing a project to the end. In my head I was like, baby, I see all my projects to the end. Honey, you're the only one that didn't see your role to the end. Oh God, that was petty. There's a part of me that's petty Petra, and I need to just put her in eyes. But do you understand what I'm trying to say to you all? As black women, I too get it. Like, I get it. I'm a black woman. I go through it. I experience it. But as a black woman, I also understand the importance of being able to sit back and do the observation and watch how, if I'm choosing to work in white-dominated spaces, to understand the dynamics of how those white-dominated spaces operate, I have to be able to learn from other situations that don't involve me. And I'm learning from it, and I'm realizing as well that you can't put all your eggs in one basket and expect that all your eggs are still going to be unsmashed. You can't put your eggs all in one basket, expect all your eggs to be okay. That's not going to work. You can't put your career, your focus, your goals in one organization and hope that they're going to just recognize that you're best in class, because it doesn't always work like that. And it kind of leads me to another conversation I wanted to have with you all, where, I love being a consultant. I love the freedom it gives me. I've got a lot of emails in the mailbox about being a consultant, a lot of people who want to go into contracting and how to do it, IR35, working under an umbrella company, all of that. And I've been able to respond periodically to people. But I always say to everybody, I always say to everybody the importance of kind of evaluating where you are in your career at certain points. And there's an episode about walking in the wilderness and a career crossroads, and talking about kind of at different periods of your career, you are going to have a crossroads where you're making certain decisions that will elevate you to the next level. I'm no different, you know, irrespective of my success in my career and success in how I define success, there are still crossroads, and I've entered a crossroad right now. One of the crossroads I've entered is I made the decision to be a contractor several years ago, and I've not looked back, and I've loved it. The introduction of IR35 has messed up a lot of us, whether you're in my industry or not. Anyone who's affected by IR35 are those people who are contractors who understood and utilised the benefits of working outside of IR35. And it really has stiffed us all from a tax perspective. When you start earning over 100 grand, you don't get no personal allowance, babe. Do you understand? Like, girl, hello? Even paying yourself dividends, I think there's a cap on how much dividends you can even pay yourself through your limited company. So we've been stiffed, and I've had to sit there and ask myself, would I ever go back perm? Would I ever be a perm employee? And even talking about it makes my throat dry, my elbows itch, because I'm very much a free spirit, and I do see perm as often quite restrictive. And I know that comes from past trauma. I know it comes from kind of feeling trapped and then going into contracting and finding my way and growing. Like, my career trajectory grew so quickly as soon as I became a contractor, because I was able to work in different projects in different organisations, and I was able to really push myself from a self-development perspective of starting again and being able to kind of develop myself into a subject matter expert in a particular organisation. So I'm a subject matter expert in my field, but to be that safe pair of hands in an organisation requires you to kind of get those quick wins in, do your due diligence, understand the dynamics of how an organisation operates. And I'll go on record to say that I love being a consultant, but financially I don't know if it's actually making sense. I actually don't, because the tax, like, I spent the best part of a week for an hour a day on the phone to HMRC. These people owe me in excess of about £3,500 as of today's date. That has been incrementally going up. And remember, we're only a few months into the new financial year. By the time I get to the next financial year, these people could owe me in excess of about £10,000. And that's a lot of money. And a lot of the way they tax is often based on estimates of what they project you're going to earn in a year. I can't operate like that. And I'm finding these tax efficient ways of doing things and putting things through self-assessment. But I really am not trying to be anyone's tax advisor. It's tiring. So I'm having conversations about possibly exploring the possibility of going perm. And if I go perm, it will be in a particular sector, and I'm very clear about what that sector is. And the criteria to go perm is very high. So we're talking about the salary band is different at this point. What you see as a benefit, I don't see as a benefit. Working from home is not a benefit. It's a benefit to the organisation, because you benefit from me being in the comfort of a familiar, non-distracting environment to be able to deliver my role. Some people seem to think that benefits are 25 days holiday. Well, they've got to give you holiday. Employment law legislates that you have to get holiday. That's not a benefit as far as I'm concerned. Some people see being a contractor as not having stability, but you have as much stability as you're willing to invest in your career progression as a consultant. But I definitely feel as though I'm at a career crossroads where I'm having to look at things holistically and say to myself, Toya, you still need to open up yourself to the possibility of going perm. And even I'm hesitating saying it, but my mentor, so you guys know Deborah from previous episodes. Deborah is actually my mentor, and she's somebody that not only do I respect, but as a black woman herself, she has done really well. She's at like senior director level. You know, her career is just, it's amazing. And being able to kind of have a conversation with her. And she says to me, Toya, what are you afraid of? And I said, well, I'm not afraid of anything, but what I'm hesitant over is feeling like I'm committing to an organisation. I'm not trying to do that. And she says, well, you're committing to your career. You're not committed to an organisation because you have a contractor mindset. And the thing is, it's really difficult to switch from a perm mindset to a contractor mindset. But once you have a contractor mindset, you always are like that. You're a consultant and you will operate like that irrespective of whether you're perm or a contractor. Now, what you need to do is be very clear on your non-negotiables. And once you're clear about your non-negotiables, you operate in that way. And also as well, you take that contractor mindset into a perm role. You can switch back at any time you want to, because that contractor mindset never leaves you. And I felt like that was like such amazing advice. And Deborah is definitely somebody that I not only look up to, that she understands me and she understands my career trajectory. She was my boss for over 2 years, and you know, she really gets kind of how seriously I take my career, because she's the same. And something that I love is I love like developing people. I love people reaching their full potential, but equally, sometimes I do find that having line reports quite exhausting. I'm not gonna lie, especially when their mindset isn't of progression. Their mindset isn't of excellence and success. They're not after that. They're after just making their money. I can't operate like that. So I feel like the next level for me is director level and having line reports. And I have a clear criteria of what I'm looking for if a perm role was to come about. But the bar is really, really high. And it will take a lot for me to kind of make that transition. As it stands now, I'm still a consultant. And I think even going perm, I'm still going to do consulting on the side, because it's what I love. It's the money that goes through my business. And also as well, I think that keeping that door open allows me to tap into, you know, and have the best of both worlds. And I just don't like the personal aspect of perm roles, like team building. I don't give a shit about your team building. I don't care that you like butter on your toast before the jam or the jam. I don't give a shit about those things. And I think I can still be like that without involving myself, if that makes sense. Like, give sprinkles without, you know. And I think I've been away from perm for so long that going back to a perm isn't far-fetched. And they say never say never. Who knows? A year from now, still be a contractor and loving it. But yeah, I just wanted to share that, because I too go through career crossroads, and I think it's important that sometimes you take a step back and really evaluate where you're going in your trajectory. And I think for me, what's exacerbated that is the whole HMRC thing. I'm not gonna lie. It really did. It really allowed me to understand how this country stiffs you. You know, the amount of taxes we pay as black women, the access to the NHS, and the way we're treated is so deplorable. But it's even more of a slap in the face when you know you're paying into the system that is slapping you. These times when I go private, the way they deal with me, I had a blood test today. The way they dealt with me, you knew you were paying privately. And I thought to myself, but with the NHS, they take my money at source. So I don't understand why they're not treating me with the same level of respect I'm getting when I'm gone private. And it kind of feels like I'm paying double. I'm paying into the system through my pay, and then I pay again to go private. It's very disrespectful at this point. Okay, let's move on to dilemmas. Can I also just say as well, when you all send your dilemmas, obviously I see in the mailbox, my assistant, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, my assistant triages these emails, because we get a lot of emails in the email box, and what she'll do is she'll like colour coordinate the dilemma so I know, and then I will put them in a folder, or she puts them in the folder. However the system works is how it works with us. But I know the dilemmas that come through, and I think the reason she colour coordinates them is so that I'm aware that they've come in new, and then I can triage them how I want to. And it also depends on what I've got planned for a podcast episode. Now, my assistant doesn't get involved in the podcast episode. She doesn't know what they're going to be about. She doesn't know anything until the day comes and she chooses to listen to it, or she'll get an email about it or something. That's the first time she sees it. So when you send a dilemma in and you ask her, when's Toya going to read it out? Number one, I don't work to your time, like your service we don't have service level agreements in terms of when you send your dilemma and when I read them in, because you don't know the amount of dilemmas we've got in the mailbox, and then there has to be a decision that's made by myself of deciding whether this dilemma is so urgent I need to go back to the person and then later on address it in the podcast, or whether I've got a future episode that I feel like your dilemma is probably a bit more suited to. But let us understand that, number one, what I have committed to is open up my mailbox to receive your work-related or life-related dilemmas. I'm committed to answering those dilemmas, either directly, depending on the dilemma itself, but whenever a dilemma is sent in, it will be read on the podcast and I will give you my advice. But what I'm not is on your timescales. So let's not do that, because I don't particularly like that. It does aggravate me a little bit, because for me it's like, come on, like, let's look at things properly here. There's a podcast that I produce. Literally, I'm a producer every Tuesday. I then do the Toy Talks masterclasses and the website stuff. I run 2 businesses and I have my career. So let's all put things into perspective. I'm not like some of these Instagram people or some of these YouTubers who have made YouTube their life and there's nothing else. I'm not that person. I have different revenue streams which require my attention, plus I'm getting married in a few months. So let's put things into perspective here. Right, so dilemma 1. Good morning, Toya. I hope you're well. You have mentioned on the podcast previously after continuously applying for jobs, especially whilst on probation. Would you be happy to cover this more in a future podcast, please? I'm particularly interested in how to politely decline offers without burning bridges. Well, let me see something, yeah. If declining an offer is burning a bridge, then that wasn't a real offer then, was it? Because an offer is a free, it's a freestanding offer that allows you to say yes or no. If you feel like you've burnt a bridge, that wasn't an offer, it was an instruction then, isn't it? That was an obligation that someone's trying to place on you. Now, obviously I've recorded the probation masterclass and the resignation masterclass, and I do go into a little bit of detail about kind of like probations and how to manage them. But in terms of how to decline an offer, I mean, I don't really know. Like, could you give me a scenario? Because for me, I don't see that as an issue. Like, for example, there's a lady, this is a good example actually. I was contracting somewhere else, right? I was consulting on a project. And there's a lady, and actually I need to reach out to her. And she basically reached out to me and she says, Toya, within this recruitment agency, they're looking for a commercial contract consultant. And I'd love to put you forward. Bearing in mind, I already had a contractor role. And she knew this. And I said, you know something? I said, give me a bit more detail. So she gave me the detail and I said, do you know what? I'm really committed to following through on my current contract. So unfortunately, I'm just not, I don't think I'm on the market to now look at another role. Do you know, 2 weeks later, she sent me an email. She says, Toya, there's a role at so-and-so organisation. This is how much they're paying. Would you be interested in me putting you forward? And I said, yeah, quite happy for you to put me forward. There was another role with another organisation, and this was a perm role. And I passed the first stage. They were literally chomping on the bit to get me to second stage. And I sent an email to the recruiter having thought about it, and I said to the recruiter, I'm not in a position to start considering perm roles, so unfortunately I will have to decline going on to the next stage. I didn't hear back from that woman again. One thing I want you to be clear about is, anytime you say no, depending on your audience, it's always a potential to burn a bridge. If they're not genuine about what they're offering you, a genuine person that has a genuine offer obviously knows that there are two options. Either the person's going to say yes, or they're going to say no. But rejecting an offer doesn't equate to burning a bridge. And this is that mindset that I feel like we need to get out of, and the person giving us the offer needs to get out of their asses. Because the yes serves them, because they get paid, they get a commission. But if that yes doesn't serve you, then it's a no. And I think providing context to your reason often kind of gives people an opportunity to know that your decision is thought out. Not like you owe anybody anything, to be honest. But if we're talking about continued relationship, then I get it, right? So I would always say, be firm about your no and provide context. So, for example, some guy, he rang me last week about a role. And I wasn't that interested, but I thought, you know what, let me just see the role. I don't want to just dismiss it. So I said to him, I'm not really too sure if I'm on the market, but you know what, send me the role and let's have a conversation. So he sent me the role, and usually it takes about 2-3 days before I get back to a recruiter. The next day, he calls me around the same time, and he says, oh, hi Toya, I sent you the email, but you didn't come back to me. I says, well, you sent it to me yesterday, and I'm working, so I haven't had a chance to review it. I said, I have had a chance to review it, but unfortunately, I don't think the role is a good fit. And he goes, why is it a good fit? I said, because where I am in my career trajectory, I feel like this is a step back. He couldn't say nothing. And he said, all right, no problem. Is he not the same man that called me this morning that I didn't pick up his call? I feel like sometimes we worry about how our no is going to be received rather than understanding the importance of communicating what it is we want. And sometimes what your wants are is often rejecting an offer. When someone gives you an offer, it's not an obligation for you to accept it. But I feel like if you handle the recruitment process in a professional way, the no doesn't sound like a no doesn't come across as a burning of a bridge. It could be the start of a new relationship, but it's about how you deliver that message and also the person receiving the message. Now, I've been in situations where I've rejected roles and the person's taken it offensively. I don't want to work with that person, to be honest, because I want to have the freedom to express myself and to say yes or no to a role that I want. Because you've got to also understand the person receiving the no has a different lever. They've got a different motivation. That motivation could be they themselves have a relationship with that organization. The lever could be that they want to get their commission. Let me be honest with you. The contract that I just finished, the organization that placed me there, the agency that placed me there, I heard from her at the beginning of that contract, at my renewal, and I haven't heard from her since. So now that I finished that contract, I haven't heard from her. You see, when I accepted the role, it gingered her. She was excited. She was getting her commission. When she drew down on that commission, now I've left that contract. Do you think she's called me to tell me that other roles on the market that she wants to put me forward for? No. And do you know why? Because she's loyal to herself. She got what she wanted. I gave her the yes to the role. I renewed 2, 3, 4 times. She got her commission. She don't owe me nothing. And that is the attitude that you have to approach the world of work, especially when you're going through a recruitment process. You don't owe anyone anything. You don't owe somebody to go through a 5, 6, 7 stage interview process. No, you don't. No, you do not. Listen, after a second stage, you ain't getting me for a third stage. I'm so sorry. You're not getting me for a third stage. And there are exceptions. If this is a director level, the third stage needs to make sense. So make sure your first 2 stages make sense. Don't put me in front of a HR manager for my first stage. That's bullshit. Because if you put me in front of a HR manager, I already know there's 2 more stages. That is the wrong person to put me in front of because they can't assess my competency. What they're assessing is a tick box exercise. And I feel as though when you ask the question without burning bridges, your intention is never to burn bridges. Your intention is to get a role that serves and suits you. Now, if you're so worried about the no, what happens is you end up saying yes to the wrong job. And I've been there, where I said yes and then I didn't want the role because something else was offered to me. Then I agonized for 1 whole week about how am I gonna take back my yes, And I feel like when you have a mature, seasoned recruiter, they respect honesty. And I always start a conversation with a recruiter like this. I'm straightforward, I'm straight to the point, and I'm honest. You're always going to get that from me. Good recruiters appreciate that. Whether they are in the perm market, whether they're in the contractor market, they want honesty and directness. And do you know why? Because then you give them an opportunity to see things the way they are. When you create smoke and mirrors for an agency, your no usually goes down badly because you've hyped them up and made them feel like, this is in the bag. Listen, I was offered a role at an organization, this was years ago, and I had like 2 interviews, and then I had to come and meet the team, and still then I hadn't been offered the role. By the time I was going through this interview process, I was still interviewing at other roles. Now, they then wanted me to bring in my passport, all of this extra stuff. Well, back then, when I wasn't really aware of how the world of work worked, I was doing all these things. When they offered me the role, I was offered another role at the same time. But for some reason, that role that they offered me, something didn't sit well with me. I don't know what it was. And I thought to myself, let me see how they give me my offer. Do you know that they offered me the role verbally? I never got nothing in writing for 2 weeks. By then, I'd already started this other role. But for me, during the probation period, and I've said it in the probation masterclass, I'm not wedded to any organization. I'm wedded to myself and my progress. So during the probation period, I'm dating the job. So I'm not loyal to nobody until I accept I've passed my probation, until they tell me I've passed and them two have passed their probation with me. Do you know when they gave me the contract, I called the recruiter. I said, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to reject this offer. He was like, why? I said, well, their recruitment process was very long and drawn out. The recruitment process tells me what an organization is like, because the recruitment process is like a shop window to how an organization operates. Thirdly, I said when I got this offer, this contract, there's so many spelling mistakes that I can see that their attention to detail is not there. So then I wonder how much attention to detail they're going to give me as I navigate through this organization and I climb up the ranks. Is there even that possibility? If there's so many spelling mistakes in the contract, then it tells me that their attention to detail with their staff, who they're recruiting for, this is a staff member who doesn't know them, that they're very lackluster, very sloppy, which tells me they're an organization that are quite sloppy. That's not the organization I want to work for. Do you know, this recruiter said, you know what, Toya? I 100% agree with you. It goes, there's nothing you said here that I can challenge because you're right. Do you know that still to this day, I'm in contact with that same agent in the same recruitment company. The same agent in the same recruitment company. He still sends me roles. Now and again, he will say, Toya, what are you up to? Just be honest. If you want to know how to not burn bridges, be honest. Anyone who throws their toys out of the pram, that is not a recruit you want to work with. Listen, there was one recruiter that I can't remember what exactly happened, but basically I think I said no to a role or whatever, and then I said no to a role, and then he'd already put me forward for a role that I'd already applied for directly. But when I applied for directly, I hadn't heard from them. Now, this recruiter wasn't happy with me because I rejected the role. So then he said, well, because you've rejected the role, don't expect to hear back from this other role. Was this man not the same one that crept back to my backside to come and tell me, you know that role that I said they wouldn't be here, they'd like to offer you an interview? I said, listen, and I put him in his place. I says, there's never going to be a point where you get to disrespect me because you're a recruiter. You are upset that I rejected a role, and basically you told me because I rejected that role, this other role now you put me forward for, they're not going to want me. Now they want to interview me. And if I say no, you're going to have to explain to them the reason why. At the end of the day, it's all about commission. If I say no, potentially you're not going to place somebody in their role. I know how hard it is to get into that organization. So already I know that you're ringing me because you appreciate how hard it is to get someone in that organisation. And I've gotten past the sifting stage. This man had to apologise to me. I ended up working for that organisation and I was there for about 2.5 years. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? These examples I'm giving you. Learning how to say no. There is an episode, there's a podcast episode, The Power of No. You need to go and listen to that podcast episode. And I think maybe you need to stop sweating the idea of not burning bridges and understand that actually sometimes saying no strengthens the bridges that you want to walk across. So hopefully that helps. Let's move on to the next episode. It's called Dilemma, Dealing with In-Laws. Hi Toya, thank you so much for all that you do for our community. I've watched you since Snapchat days and I've gained a lot from the wisdom you have shared. I truly pray God blesses you abundantly and you reap the rewards abundantly of all the seeds you have sown. And massive congratulations on your marriage. I'm engaged to be married to the most wonderful man. He is so kind and giving, and unfortunately it is one of his biggest weaknesses. His sister is a woman married with kids, and she is a stay-at-home wife while her husband works full-time. When I first met her, she made it a point to ask me if I worked and what my family members did for a living. She then proceeded to mention that she worked before, and due to kids, she stopped, and how her focus is being a homemaker. All her kids are now in school. Okay. Her and her husband sometimes have financial difficulties, and my fiance always helps out. Wow! While she's still doing homemaking, Abby. Not only that, as they live in the same area, she will sometimes just call him and request for stuff and favours, i.e. ask him to drop off food or go to a takeaway and drop off food, and ask for very extravagant gifts from him. Yeah, because she's staying at home, innit? Looking at QVC to decide what she wants. I fully appreciate that that's his sister, and childcare is difficult in this country as it's hard to find someone who you trust to look after your kids, but me and my fiance are trying to build a life together and plan a wedding. I'm concerned that after we are married, we will be carrying the burden of his sister, and from my observation, I am not sure his sister wants to get a job. It's not observation, she don't want to get a job. That's why she's happy to send your husband on errands. I really want to have an open and honest discussion with my husband about this, but do not want to seem to be attacking his sister. Listen, telling the truth is not attacking one's sister, it's telling the truth. As we all know, Africans in the whole in-law situation, and I do not want to start on the wrong foot in the in-laws. Another issue is when we discuss our plans, he has a tendency of going back to tell his sister, who always wants to add her 2 cents. Marriage is a business contract between two people. However, this one is starting to feel like it's prematurely floating on the London Stock Exchange. I'm finished. How best do you advise me to handle this? And then she said, there's a couple of things she said in here that I don't want to say. And then she said, let those with ears hear. I'm actually very dead. Okay. So this is what I'm going to say to you. One thing I don't play about with is my home. I don't play about my home, okay? Okay, that's his sister. And his sister is a whole married woman. And what his sister needs to understand is her husband is not doing his duty as a husband. Because I don't understand how her husband is comfortable knowing that it's her brother that's really the man of his house. I'm not into this whole, because it's my family, in-law, I'm married into family, I can't speak. You need to speak. Because when we talk about divorce and things like that, finances are a big, and I even think that there is a statistic that sees finances being one of the major reasons why divorces take place. You need to set boundaries for your relationship with your fiance, and you need to have a conversation with him. Listen, all of this is, he's so nice, all of this, okay, that's great. But let's be honest. When that niceness starts to affect your home, it becomes a problem. It's not nice anymore, it's nasty. With the sister, she's a problem. You see these people who are self-appointed homemakers. How can you be making a home when there's no one there? Girl, go get a job. Go get a job and get busy. Get busy. Even if she's building her own business, I can even stomach that. But what I'm not here for is when people call themselves a homemaker, your kids are not at home. You were working before. So this homemaker vocation came about when you had kids. And this is what pisses me off. Having children is not a sickness. I keep telling people, having children is not a sickness. You need to understand something about me. When I am pregnant, the only time I'm not working is if the doctor tells me I'm not allowed to work. I'll be working right up until the birth of my child. Be under no illusion. Kay and I have had that discussion whereby I have been very clear. My child being born into the family we are building is a blessing, as is the mental health of our child, mother, me. I need to be working. I'm working in terms of my career, my businesses. I need to go back to that because that's what gives me balance and purpose. And now, having a child gives me the focus for that purpose is to create a great life for my child. These people that have kids and use their kids as an excuse to not do certain things are lazy. Because you're not lazy when you're picking up the phone and calling your fiance to ask him to go and pick up or go and get. What's her husband doing? Your husband isn't taking care of his home. If your husband isn't taking care of his home, what is he doing? Oh, they're having financial difficulties. Everybody's having financial difficulties, my dear. We're on the brink of a recession. The cost of living crisis is affecting everybody. But your fiance still goes out to work. And unless you set the boundaries for finances listen, we've got a financial literacy podcast episode. The business of marriage, we have a podcast episode on that as well. You need to set boundaries and perimeters, because unless you do that, you will see her in the house with your kids asking you to babysit them kids while she goes out gallivanting with her friends, going to 805, going to eat, point and kill. So it's better for you to set the parameters now. And part of the parameters is also having a conversation with your fiance. When we're having a discussion about our family that we are about to create, I don't expect you to go to your sister and start spilling the beans about the things that we speak privately. Because if you don't give me my privacy, as in our relationship, how am I to trust you with being vulnerable? You need to have those conversations, because I'm not doing this, oh, he's so nice. No. Him being so nice is lovely and great, but it's not nice for you, because you are now going to have to carry the burden of his sister. His sister is a burden. She's a burden. She's a burden because she doesn't know where the sister begin or end. Boundaries. What she is jealous of you, darling, because she knows that you can go and withdraw money out of your bank account and go and get that food for yourself. She got a problem. I don't see how somebody who's a homemaker can give their 2 cents on people that are working. Now, don't get it twisted. I don't look down my nose at people who are homemakers, because there was a period of my life when I was growing up as a kid where my mum wasn't working and she was just looking after me and my brothers. But you better understand that my mum was minding her business and she wasn't involving herself in the business of her in-laws. My mum wasn't doing that. My mum was actually a homemaker. My mum kept a good home. She made sure there was food for us when we got home. My mum was very present. Like, I feel there's a period of my mum's life where she just wanted to be present for me and my siblings, so she didn't want to work, and my dad could cover it. But when my dad couldn't cover it anymore, my mum found herself at the job centre. My mum found herself with job applications. My mum found herself updating her CV, and she found a job. Sometimes I think that people who are homemakers, there's 2 types of homemakers. There's real homemakers and there's fake homemakers. The fake homemakers will start making the excuse that they need to be home for their kids. These times their kids are doing activities after school. What are you doing? And these same homemakers are not going to those activities to watch their children. They're eating KFC, Nando's, they're eating Uncle Sam's, they're eating takeaway food, takeaway Chinese, takeaway Indian food. They're eating all types of takeaway in the house, gaining weight and creating problems. Having 2 cents means you've got too much time. If she's got too much of an opinion, she's got too much time on her hands. If you've got too much time on your hands, you need to get a job. Okay, you need to get a job. I definitely think that it's important that everybody understands their boundaries. And you are the fiance. You have not even walked down the aisle. When you're married, I'm going to tell you this now. Kay and I are about to celebrate 1 year of marriage. We were together for 4 years. No, so we were together for 3 years, engaged for 1 year, and now we're married. We've been married, and in all, we've been together for 5 years. One thing I've always respected about Kay is the boundaries that he has set in terms of, for me to feel very integrated in his family, but equally to understand that we as husband and wife are creating a family together. And in creating a family together, you have to create a wall around that to protect it. There are certain things and certain conversations Kay and I have that stay within the realms of a marriage. And as soon as you start inviting opinions into your marriage, you are inviting people into your marriage. When you invite people into your marriage, it's a slippery slope to a divorce. Because when you're up there exchanging vows, it's the two of you. When you're exchanging vows, it's not 2 plus everybody else. That's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to say to you is, you need to create boundaries as well. And you need to be clear about what your expectations are of your husband. Because we haven't even got to the episode yet where we're going to talk about all of this about submission. Submission is mutual. Submission is mutual. A man submits to his marriage. Can we hear that again? Can we wheel it up? A man submits to his marriage. What do I mean by that? A man submits to the union in which he has chosen freely to participate in, the union of 2 people. 2! A woman, in my opinion, as a heterosexual woman, submits to a man. She submits to opening and sharing her life with this man. But be under no illusion, submission is not one way. Both parties submit. When you're submitting, it is to each other. When you are getting married, you face each other. Before people walk down the aisle, there's certain conversations they're not even trying to have. If you're in an interracial relationship, you're not having conversations about how you're going to raise possible children. You're not having conversations about race. If you are deciding to get married, some people are racing down the aisle before the person who proposed changed their mind. So they're not having those conversations about what are your expectations of me in this marriage. People are not having those conversations. If we are going to be married, we are going to have to share in decisions. Finances is one of those decisions. Let me be very honest with you. I got told off by Kate today. I made a financial decision that I had every right to make. But I had to let him know I was making that decision because it also affected him. And I had to apologize to him because I was like, hey, I am so sorry. Because for me, it was very like, you know, it wasn't anything that I kind of, it just was, you know, it was a spur of the moment decision. And Kay was like, I get that. And I'm okay with you making that spur of the moment decision, but let me know that you've made that decision so that I know you've made that decision before you've done it. Marriage. That's how marriage works, baby. And I had to apologize to him because I have been independent for so long that I didn't even know that was a thing. But when you start talking about finances and marriage, I'm telling you right now, that episode is coming because it's in the works. Because when people are talking about mortgage and marriage, some people got it conflated or very mixed up. There is no choice. It should always be mortgage first. People can get you see, some people, their view of marriage is very much convoluted and very much confused. You don't have to have a big marriage for it to call a marriage. We had 12 people at our wedding. It was the best. We are now doing a trad wedding blessing where everybody's going to join, and still that's at 60 people, because I'm not trying to feed the 500. Okay, we ain't doing it. This is not a feeding center. I say this all to say, I'm really glad this is happening, babe, because it's causing you to see certain things and to have certain conversations. These are conversations you have before you get married. Your sister needs to know her place because she doesn't know her place. His sister needs a job. Because when you're being a busybody, that means you're a busybody doing nothing. That means you need to get busy. Getting busy is finding a job. I'm telling you, after she's done a job Monday to Friday, she's too tired to figure out what you guys are doing. The reason why they're in financial problem is because she's not working. If she's working, excuse me, picked up a part-time job somewhere, at least then you can say that she's trying to help her situation. But I really have a problem when a couple says they're having a financial situation and only one of you's working, but your kids are in school during a certain hour. What are you doing? And you're able-bodied. There's nothing stopping you. You're using the title of homemaker to come and distract us. That's some bullshit. And you need to have a conversation with your fiance, because he's an enabler. He's enabling her to do nothing because she knows that your fiance is going to bail her out. And what is going to happen is when you start having your children, or when you start now having conversation about having children, she's going to end up resenting you because she's going to see that you're taking her brother away from the focus of helping her and her family out. When the sister was having kids, your brother wasn't involved. Your fiance wasn't involved. She needs to face her husband, because clearly, if he's not doing the job that needs to be done, then that's between him and his sister and the husband to sort out. But when you have kids, you have a financial responsibility for them children, and if you cannot cope with the financial responsibility of them kids, pick up a job, babes. And so I suggest that you have a conversation. You have to have this. You need to set some boundaries. Otherwise, the only person that's going to be crying, darling, is you. Anyway. I'm going to leave the episode there. I'm hoping that next week we're going to have a brand new laptop. The sound is going to be sounding sweet. Thank you for your patience, and I apologize because I am so upset. I actively, and if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen me in the Apple store trying to get a new laptop, to be told that they're sold out. I was really pissed off. But yeah, Apple, you stay making that money, and we stay paying into that bank, honey. We stay paying you guys to give stupid software updates. Sorry. Anyway, I digress. If you would like to follow me on social media, my personal Instagram page is Toya_Washington. The Toya Talks podcast Instagram page is Toya_Talks. I am also on TikTok, Toya_Washington. Of course, I am on Snapchat, Toya_Washington. We are also on Twitter, Toya_W, with the hashtag Toya Talks podcast or Toya Talks. And of course, if you have a work-related dilemma or is a life-related dilemma, email hello@toyatalks.com, and you will remain anonymous. I will read out your dilemma, and hopefully I'm able to advise you the best way I can on your dilemma. I will also say is please keep a lookout for the website, the masterclasses that are being relaunched on the Toya Talks Academy, and it will be on toyatalks.com website. We are still uploading the 2 new masterclasses, so I'm hoping that will be done this week. And if you follow me on social media, you'll get to see the announcement. Of course, those people who have already previously bought masterclasses, you are going to get an email which will be clear that you will still have access to the masterclasses that you've purchased. You'll be given a discount code, and then you'll be able to create a dashboard for yourself where you'll have your masterclasses already there. We are just really busy, just trying to sort out the back end. I'm also trying to sort out a wedding, trying to sort out my businesses, my life. So please be patient. That email will come through. And I'm going to leave it there. I have so many other topics I wanted to talk about in this episode, but we have run out of time. So I will see you all again next week for a new podcast episode. I'm really excited for next week because I'll have a new laptop. Sorry, I got to go. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate all of you. Make sure you share this podcast episode. Make sure you share previous podcast episodes. If you're new to the Toya Talks fam, welcome. Make sure you acquaint yourself with some of the previous episodes. If you're unsure about an episode, make sure you read the show notes that accompany every episode, because I write those show notes myself, which gives you an insight into the podcast episodes, or if there is a dilemma in that episode, go ahead and have a listen. Make sure you follow me on social media, and I will see you all again next week, Tuesday. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toy Talks podcast.